High school is a tough environment. I think that the 4 years that we spend in high school affect our lives more profoundly than any other period in our lives, with the possible exception of going off to war. Think about it. Here you have a mass of people who are just past puberty or just hitting puberty. They're taken out of their local grade schools and thrown into a cage with a whole bunch of other disoriented people, most of them strangers to each other. Sexual urges are arriving as powerful as diesel engines. Everybody is confused and anxious and trying their damnedest to grow up. At this time of life, kids are super sensitive to the opinions of their peers, and biology is ruthlessly sorting them into groups. Suddenly, girls are becoming beautiful or missing that mark by a wide margin. Boys are turning into athletic, chiseled men or inheriting bodies that are made for pencil pushing. Out of all these randomly distributed advantages and disadvantages come the social categories that will haunt us for the rest of our lives. We get the socias and the nerds and the jocks and the stoners, whatever categories pop up. People run this way and that trying to find a place in this Lord of the Flies environment. It's brutal for most of us. But for some of us, it's pretty great. High school has traditionally offered the best opportunities to the people who have already been blessed by nature. The big symmetrical guys are scouted for the sports teams, and the beautiful symmetrical girls are recruited to cheer them on. Crowds gather under the lights every Friday night to watch the dance of the beautiful and the powerful, the lucky ones, the cool kids. For most of us, watching the game from the sidelines is an exercise in disappointment. We watch the fortunate ones and learn to accept that life is not fair. For some kids, though, this triggers seething anger and resentment. They will never quite get over it. And for the bookish, nerdy kids, there is another challenge coming: college. They head off to the universities expecting more of the same, just a lot of boring bookwork and a dead social life. But somewhere in their first year, they realize that all the hard work they've done in high school really pays off in college. Classes are relatively easy for them. They didn't have much else to do for 4 years except homework. The way that they had coped with social isolation was by acing tests. The only status they ever had was as teacher's favorite and maybe a place on the debate team or the math team. They are geared up for higher learning in a way that not even the jocks and socias are. Suddenly they are seen as intellectual entities. There are more nerds here than any other group. The athletes and the sorority girls are still riding high, but their numbers are few. They are still beautiful, but except for the few who will turn pro, the end is near for them, and the world is now opening wide for the bookworms, for the nerds. But there is still something missing, a group that will bestow upon them the magical power of coolness. And then they meet the activist kids. These kids are a couple of years in, and though clearly of the nerd class, they seem confident, pushy even. They're loud and aggressively verbal and not afraid to throw down at a moment's notice. These kids have taken the left-leaning politics of their professors and tucked it into themselves like a switchblade into a pocket. They've taken socialist ideology and made it into both a weapon and a badge of cool. This is like a gift of heaven to our beleaguered bookworms who've never had the slightest chance to be seen as hip. And they grab this social justice thing like a life preserver on a stormy sea. Wow. This is awesome. If these kids have one talent, it's in receiving information and repeating it back. High school demanded that they read the material, reorganize the ideas slightly, and hand them back to teacher in well-formed sentences with a liberal sprinkling of fancy words. These kids who never got to play beneath the lights on Friday night now have a sport of their own. Grievance is the ball, and the field is the whole wide world. They begin to dress in ways that boldly defy the traditional attractiveness of the jocks and cheerleaders. Now, ill-fitting clothes, dark hair parted down the middle, and black-framed glasses is a style. They're on the field now, and baby, they are not going to lose. They are the new cool kids. The new game is very simple. It's one thing, oppressed versus oppressor, with the coolest of the new cool kids playing the key positions. But first you need your equipment in order. You listen to Howard Zinn audiobooks and Young Turks podcasts. You watch late-night TV and develop your snarky comment skills. You get your oppression talking points honed to a fine point and skirmish on Twitter for practice. And then, whenever the mass of ex-nerds smart people fill the streets to hate on conservatives, you are there with everything you've got. It's game day and there will be a party later. In the afterglow, they look out into the larger society. They see that their newly adopted politics are also held by movie stars and rock stars and artists. All of the cool people in adult life are social justice warriors too. Madonna and Leonardo DiCaprio and Alyssa Milano, everybody's saying the same things, pointing at the same enemies. It's also clear now for the new cool kids. They leave college determined never again to sit on the sidelines, and they don't. 50 years later, they are still trying to change the world by changing other people. If you watch this channel, you are not the cool kids. You probably never even spent one night memorizing the list of grievances and injustices that the new cool kids can recite like nursery rhymes whenever they see a microphone. Nope. You probably never had much status with the old cool kids in high school either. You probably started working early on and gradually became really good at something, a number of things. You married somebody who brought out your best and thought that you did the same for her. You made a home and some great kids and never gave all that much thought to what was cool and what wasn't cool. And now you watch mostly with amusement as this group fights that group for attention and bragging rights. You know it's all BS, really. You learned early on that cool is just insecurity in a leather jacket, and that all of the best things just show up along the path and feel as natural as if they'd always been there. Somewhere along that same path, you realize that you had become strong and steady and resilient. You look around the dinner table and see smiling faces, good and genuine people grateful for their lives, no preening stars of the social scene or victims looking for guilt payments. Life is calm. Life makes sense. You somehow got everything you need and just about everything you could ever want. And in the end, maybe that's what being cool is really all about. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.